Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of the Brannigan Communications Podcast. I am your host, Grace Gregg, and I am here joined with Sally Brannigan and Rebecca Kanya. And today we are going to be talking about soft skills and their importance. One of the reasons why this topic got brought up was because this is something that you guys recently presented on. It's also something I think that we talk about a lot in the office and how it's attached to emotional intelligence and how enhancing your soft skills can help emotional intelligence, right? So I guess for anyone out there who doesn't fully have an understanding of what soft skills may be, the way that I think of them is being hard skills are what you do and soft skills are how you do it.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So, going back to emotional intelligence, I guess, could someone explain why that's even important in the first place?
I think it's like you said, Grace, it's about how you do it. And so much of the outcome of whatever you're trying to do in work or in your personal life has to do with how you got there, how people perceive you, what your capabilities are, but then also like how you are to be around and how that affects other people. I think many soft skills in business fall under the kind of thing that makes other people's work life easier or projects and capabilities for them possible. What you do impacts all of that.
So, what are some soft skills, that you find most important to own or master in our industry?
Well, when we did the presentation, we broke it down into 4 kind of categories. I think one of the basic ones that's different between different demographics, so it can be different if you are young in your career versus more established because you grew up in a different time. Those kind of things like presentation skills fall in that category to me. Like how you dress and how you interact in the workplace, how formal you are. I feel like our culture has gotten less formal with the advent of social media and a more kind of, our personal life bleeds into our work life more, and there's so many great things that come out of that. But sometimes the management at a client or even within your own workplace is of a different demographic, and then what seems perfectly reasonable in terms of presentation for one demographic doesn't feel that way to the management, and often those are decision makers. So then this gets to your promotability and your ability to be successful in a wide range of client meetings and presentations. It's pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Sally said, and I think it's also, those, non-tangibles, in our industry, adaptability, and being able to communicate. And I mean, obviously, communications industry, communication is vital, but just being able to handle different situations and being able to be flexible and, go from one scenario to another.
So you mentioned social media being a big part of why maybe there is like a generation disconnect. What are there any other things that come to mind when you think about why maybe our generation lacks certain soft skills that came more naturally to your generation?
I don't know if I'd even phrase it that way, like your generation lacks them. I feel like we have different soft skills. So even within something like being direct in the workplace, that is even different from generation to generation and from personality to personality. But I feel like the soft skills kind of go over the top of that. It's an overlay of trying to consider what will make getting the work done easier for the people around you. The specifics that fall under presentation that we had talked about are things like your personal brand, coming across polished and professional, paying attention to what your audience is going to be. One of our clients labels their dress code within their company as dress for your day, which I think is great because that requires you to think about, what am I doing today? If you're going to a client meeting, you should probably dress differently than a casual day at your office. But those kind of things didn't used to have to be written out or nailed down because everybody dressed at a certain level of professional dress all the time. Now I feel like it's great. There's a lot more kind of creative and loose relationship between people, especially when you're dressed down. And that culture is really one of the best things about Brannigan, is a culture of friendship within the workplace. But the soft skill of knowing when you have to take it up a notch and how to do that in a way that is comfortable for a wide range of clients and coworkers. That's important. Like no yoga pants at a client meeting, or no spaghetti straps in when you're going to somebody else's office. Just what seems basic, but if you get pretty casual in the workplace and have a really good working session and working dynamic, it can get, I think the lines blur, and it's good to remember. Assess it before you leave the house.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's important. But I like that you said, having a more casual, maybe atmosphere allows you to build your brand, right? But also abiding to the soft skill of knowing how to presentation helps you build your brand of being a professional. So I think they're so closely tied, and it's always a good reminder, right, to talk about this.
I think many of them cross all industries.
Right.
Rebecca, you probably have the actual list that we used. It had things like keep your desk neat, be on time, that concept that somebody within our office articulated so well. Don't let the small things, like being on time and being properly dressed.
And being prepared, bringing, the essentials with you, don't show up at a meeting without, a pen and paper, because if you have to go back after a meeting and ask a ton of questions about what you were meeting on, well then, I think that's also kind of active listening too. If you're, there, then you should be paying attention.
But I guess, so my question is, how might that differ than maybe if you're in a different industry? Because I think having a neat desk can help you in all industries, right? That's always helpful to just stay organized. But are there any that you think are very specific to communications?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think soft skills really kind of cross every industry, and those are things that a lot of it's common sense, but a lot of it you acquire over time, through experience too. I think being in the workplace, but whether you work in a coffee shop or you work in, a public relations or communications firm, you want to be able to engage with your customer, your client, and do it in a professional manner. So, I think that's something that you can
across all the workplaces. You don't want this controllable small stuff to be your downfall. No matter what your job, there will be challenges that you can't anticipate, and that you can work ahead to make them easy, but these are things you can control. So time management was the other thing. I feel like, especially when you're in a deadline driven, that might be something that is specific to our field, but I feel like it's really important, especially in our office and with as fast moving as our work tends to be, that you need to manage your time and think ahead to how your time management and the schedule you're keeping affects your coworkers and clients. Because if your deadline is tomorrow and you're working on it today, but you still have to get somebody's review and buy off within your office, well, that's not actually time management.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if your deadline is next week and you're putting it off until later, because you have other things going on, or you're I have time on that, that could be affecting other people's time because other things come up that are hotter than maybe that one thing that you're working on. Shout out to episode 8 on time management if you want to learn more about time management skills that we find important here. Check out that episode.
I am continually impressed with how much work we turn out timely and how often we get feedback from our clients that our nimbleness and our ability to deliver quickly and to shift gears if we need to, how good that is. So that's something that I have little to do with, but I constantly am impressed with our abilities.
I remember I was in an interview right after graduation for an agency, and they asked me what I think is more important, turning something in on time or perfecting it. And I'm very deadline driven, So I said, turning it in on time. But I was like, well, what would be the
alternative? Was there a right answer?
Yeah, like what's right? Like which one? They're both so important. I don't know. And they were like, well, that's good because in this industry, they just reiterated basically what you said. It's so important to be on time versus perfection. That can be fleshed out later, like after, but if you miss that first deadline of review, then it's just going to push everything back. And there's probably going to be other changes that still need to be made.
Right. Yeah, perfections can be a downfall. I mean, if you're just then you're just, I don't think you're ever going to be happy with your final outcome.
I feel like the kind of person who goes into this field is also often detail oriented, and then that becomes like a never-ending cycle of fixing.
Yeah.
So high quality is important,
Yes.
but being timely just as important.
Yes, of course. Rebecca, you had mentioned talking about soft skills that maybe you can improve throughout your career, and I'm wondering if there are any skills that either of you initially struggled with maybe earlier on in your career.
I don't know. Maybe like adaptability, just being able to pivot, from one project to the next. Like you mentioned, in our day-to-day, we can, have our projects and, know our deadlines, and then all of a sudden, like something hot will,
displace everything.
Exactly. And just having that ability to be able to pivot and, and juggle those projects, and still keep those deadlines in the air and meet them, but, address whatever fire, because there's always a fire to put out. So I think, that's something that I've definitely developed, over even just being here for the last 2.5 years.
How have you developed it?
For me, I think it's through experience, and I did have. I can recall. I think it was maybe after being here a year and having a project that kind of did go off the rails, and it wasn't. I wrote it for the client, thinking we'd done the interview and thought that we had met his objectives, and should have probably been like more, on the follow-up end, but of course, facing other deadlines, I let it kind of fall. And then he came back and said it wasn't anything to do with, the topic. So, I turned my attention to hit like that, and, maybe let other projects slide just to make sure that it was the perfection that he wanted. So I kind of learned the hard way, I would say, about
those mistakes that you don't make very many times.
Right. Now I think, I try to make sure that, I'm active listening, like when, they're saying that, these are the things that you want to focus on, but then also not losing, focus of other projects in light of something that might be more difficult.
I feel like the thing that helps you get better at that is really successes.
Exactly.
Like you avoid what was painful in the future, but also the more success you have, the more you can relax and that it can be done, and that way you get it done faster, more efficiently. The thing I struggled with was different, and I still do, but I think it's so driven by your personality. What's easy for some is hard for others. Like it's, some people struggle even to get to work on time. Like just being timely is harder depending on your personality and what your situation is. But I struggle with being direct, and I struggled a lot with it in the beginning, which laps over, so it's not totally respectful. It's especially not respectful of other people's time. If you have to beat around the bush to get to your point, that becomes like a headache for your coworkers and your clients, and that's something that I had to get better at. And the strategy to get better at it that worked for me was to capitalize on the people that don't let you get away with it, and spend more time with people who will call you on it. It gets at feedback. Like we all have our areas of weakness, professionally, interpersonally. That's like we're all built differently. There's beauty in that. But if you cultivate relationships where people will be truthful with you, like you know who the people are in your life who will be like, yeah, you're not great at that. Those people are gold because they will help you grow. So don't shy away from the people who will tell it to you like it really is. Mm-hmm. That's my advice.
That's good advice. That's also surprising because I feel like everything you say is very direct and to the point, and you don't.
Well, you can thank Mr. Tom Brannigan for some of that.
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
He does not like the beating around the bush. So you grow together. Like your family helps you too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I guess we talked about skills that young professionals commonly overlook, right? I don't know. We kind of did.
Yeah, I think do we have a little punch list? Focusing on your personal brand, being polished, listening to and working in the company's rules about attire and that kind of thing, being prepared, jumping in, active listening.
So I guess based on that and what you guys had just said about how you improved on improving, the skills that maybe you struggled with in the beginning, what is some advice that you would have for someone struggling with soft skills like those that you just named?
I mean, I would say, seek advice from, other colleagues or your supervisor, always, what can I do to improve? Not just like waiting for your annual review and then being like surprised, like, what? Just constantly seeking out, ways to improve.
And not taking it personally, like actually wanting. I feel like there's a difference between seeking it out because you should and actually wanting it. Like be a person who wants the criticism so that you can improve. That kind of living is so much more effective. You'll get more of what you want. You'll be happier. The people around you will get more of what they want. It's just a win-win.
Mm-hmm. So going back to active listening, are there any tips that you would have on how to improve that for someone maybe that's struggling there?
I think Rebecca's tip is the most important. Bring your pen and paper. I don't want to sound too old school, but in the digital age, we all have our phone and we all have notes and calendar things on there. Just show up to everything with paper and pen. It keeps you engaged. It keeps you aware that you're there for more than a passive role. And then don't forget, this sounds like, I don't know, it might be too soundbitey, but really what you're after in the workplace and in your personal relationships is excellence. Your own excellence, the organization's excellence. You want to be promotable, not just because you want to succeed in your career, but because you want to be valuable and you want your organization to do the best work that it can. That involves being respectful and diligent. And if you incorporate all of that stuff into every meeting you go to, you can't help but succeed because your ideas and your individual gifts will rise out of that. But if you get passive, then all of your gifts are wasted because you're not bringing them out to the room. So it's important.
I think Kathleen has said this many times, but showing up, right? So
Like real showing
Always,
up.
yeah.
She does
That-
say that, and she does it with that sparkle. And it makes you, yeah.
I've heard her say it a lot, and it's always a good reminder because it is so easy. Oh my gosh. First of all, I can't take notes on my computer, and when I do, they get lost and jumbled, and I love to write everything down. So whenever I forget a pen and paper, it's not good. So I try to always remember that.
It's not everybody's jam, but I feel like it elevates anyone.
Yeah.
Like when you do it, you're better than when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I think it also makes the client feel valued too when they see that you are engaged and
That's so true.
Yeah. Well, not only the
Faithful.
client, I think everyone you're around, just whoever, I don't know, personally as junior staff member, is that the correct
I
terminology?
don't know that you're junior anymore, Grace.
Okay, as an assistant account executive, when I'm working with Emma and she's writing things down that I'm saying, I feel valued too. And that's someone that is, above me in their career, but is still, I can see that is actively listening, and it's not just going in one ear and going out the other.
Yeah, showing up. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's our show. Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Rebecca, for taking the time to do this as well.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
It was
thanks
fun.
for inviting us.
Thank you all for listening. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe on all podcast channels, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Thank you.